بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Let's talk about Ibn al-Jazari and his definition, Ibn al-Jazari's definition of the science of Qira'at. But before we do, let's step back and look at the bird's eye view to remind ourselves where we are now, what we have done so far. So we've been talking about, this is unit 4 of the Quranic Sciences book. We've been talking about the qira'at. We started by looking at what is a qira'ah in terms of the stories, the story of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the story of Umar, the story of Ubay. Then we looked at the 10 beautiful, amazing wisdoms and benefits. Then we took a small tangent into the hadith science so we can learn what is mutawatir and what is sahih. Then we returned back and looked at the types and number of qira'at. We looked at the top 7, as-sab'u. We looked at the most popular qira'at. We looked at al-thalath, the next 3, which is which together with the 7 is the 10 canonical. We looked at ash-shadha, non-conforming. We looked at the next 4, so we got 14 now, and then we looked at what's after the 14. We took a quick look at a fake qira'ah that was caught and exposed. That's the only qira'ah that I am aware of that seems to be mentioned in the books of Quranic sciences that was ever produced and caught and exposed. There's no other historical record. There's no historical record of any other qira'ats. What is not a qira'ah? We looked at that last time. And now we're going to look at a technical definition, Ibn al-Jazari's definition of the qira'at, inshallah. And after that, we still have a few more lessons to go to complete understanding of the qira'at. So Ibn al-Jazari, an absolute genius, a polymath, one of the greatest ulama, and he's written so many books, expert in Quran. He defines the science of qira'at as follows. This is his definition of the science of qira'at. He says, al-qira'atu ilmun bikayfiyati adai kalimat al-Quran wa ikhtilafiha ma'zuwan linaqilihi. Beautiful definition. Let's break it down. It is the knowledge, al-qira'at ilmun. It is the knowledge of the execution of the words of the Quran. How to execute the words, meaning say them correctly, following the rules of tajweed, and their diversity and the various ways of saying certain words, like Maliki Yawmiddin, Maliki Yawmiddin, diversity. Tracing it back, it has to be traced back to its transmitter, linaqilihi. That's very important. You have to trace it back. If you can't trace it back, that means there's no chain of transmission. There's no way to prove that it's a qira'ah. Every qira'ah must have, just like hadith science teaches us, chains of transmission. So from this definition, there are things we can observe, things we can conclude and understand. Qira'ah must be authenticated by tracing it all the way back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Else, it's neither a qira'ah nor considered Quran. If it's not a qira'ah, it's not Quran, right? Because Quran is qira'at. It's all about reliable transmission. Very important. Once it's been authenticated, it's been verified, validated, we follow it exactly as we hear it from certified reciters without making any alterations, changes, additions, or subtraction whatsoever. Sami'na wa ata'na. What we hear is what we obey, what we recite. We don't change it. We don't add, subtract. There's no room for personal judgment or opinions when it comes to qira'at. What you hear is what you get, is what you say, is what you memorize, is what you teach and learn. The knowledge of qira'at cannot be acquired by you mentally thinking about it, by scientific method or rational reasoning. It can only be acquired orally by listening from reliable and certified teachers. In other words, you cannot apply the scientific method or rational reasoning because this is news, information that has been transmitted by eyewitnesses or ear witnesses. Whoever studies any qira'ah on their own without certified teachers is mistaken, even if they get it right. You cannot study qira'at on your own. You have to study them from reliable sources. And you have to hear it from your teacher. So this beautiful definition of qira'at from Ibn al-Jazary helps us see a technical perspective on what is a qira'ah. Now, the way we started studying qira'at in this unit is by looking at a story. Stories are one of the most powerful and effective ways to learn something. So that's why I started with the stories. If I started with this, it would be a little too abstract. But now that you have heard the story of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, story of Umar, story of Ubay, and you looked at the benefits of qira'at, you looked at all the different qira'at, then when you study this technical definition, it becomes easier and more meaningful to appreciate this definition by Ibn al-Jazari, who is an absolute giant in Islamic scholarship, specifically Quranic sciences as well as other sciences. In the next lesson, we have another one of Ibn al-Jazari's important teachings, how he interpreted the seven ahruf, the sab'at ahruf that we talked about earlier. The next thing for you to do is to go through these questions, answer these questions by looking back. These questions will help you review everything that we have studied up until now, and then memorize the vocabulary, and then take the quiz, inshallah ta'ala. والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.